Hi, everybody. It is Dan and Chris again with another episode of A Father's Love Healing Through Heartache. And we're super excited tonight to be joined by Joseph Gatlin. I don't want to take any of Joseph's story, I want him to share it, but we've met Joseph through one of our Facebook groups. So, Chris, good to see you.
Dan, it's always good to see you. Joseph, we're excited to have you on and for you to share your story. Unfortunate as always to meet you this way, but I'm excited to kind of pick your brain and see how it's gone for you. So welcome.
Thanks, guys.
And
Appreciate it.
we're going to dive right in. Joseph, the floor is yours to share whatever it is you want to share.
All right. Well, yeah, like you guys had said, we found each other kind of on one of the Facebook groups that originally that I started back in 2017, not too long after I lost my son Everett. So kind of just to give a little backstory to his story, is in 2015. We decided at that point we'd been married for a few years and we wanted to try to start having kids. And we tried for a while and we had some struggles getting pregnant, and then we did. And then about 10 weeks later, we had a miscarriage. And, at the time it was sad. It was hard. It brought a different level of emotion and grief with it as well. But, we went back to square one, so to speak, and started trying and continued to struggle to get pregnant. And we ended up starting some fertility treatments. And we ended up arriving to IVF and having to utilize in vitro to get pregnant. And so the first round, we ended up getting pregnant with Everett. And the pregnancy was actually fairly smooth up until about 24 weeks. There was some concerns with some heart valve that was kind of prematurely closing, and with modern medicine and some medication adjustments, they were able to kind of change the direction of that growth within the heart. And we were going in quite frequently for ultrasounds and just various testing. And once we were at 28 weeks, they were like, we were seeing the best children's cardiac doctor within the state at the U of M, and he was pretty much cleared, like, this is fine. We don't need to see you back continuously. So we continued to go in kind of on a weekly basis, just getting ultrasounds, just other medical conditions. I mean, my wife, from a maternal age, is considered old, in her mid-30s. So we were going in and continuing to get monitored. And we were getting close to about 38 weeks, and Sarah started to have some different issues with vision and just some weird pain stuff. And so we went in the weekend before we lost Everett, and they did some testing, and they didn't see anything wrong. It just kind of chalked it up, that he was kind of getting ready to make his appearance. Fast forward, we go home. It's the weekend, and the next Monday, we're supposed to be back at the clinic for our final ultrasound. We were going to be induced that next Wednesday, which would have been just a little after 40 weeks. Because in Minnesota, they have what's called the 39-week rule, which they can't, unless it's super significant risk to the mother, they can't induce pregnancy any earlier than 39 weeks. So once we crossed that threshold, we kind of got a date set. So Sunday night, we're kind of gearing up to go in basically for our last ultrasound. We go in Monday, and I went to all the appointments. It was kind of one of those things where the IVF journey I felt was such a, I was just kind of a bystander. My wife really had to do, all the shots, and so much of it was her, that I felt like at least me being there for appointments and being present was the way that I could help be supportive and show that, I was doing, kind of putting my time to that as well. So, so Monday morning we went to the clinic, and same clinic that we were seeing all through the pregnancy, and they went to the room and they pulled up Everett on the ultrasound screen, and we had been through so many ultrasounds that you get to see and know kind of what it looks like and what it sounds like, and when they pulled it up, on the TV, it was almost like a still image, and I just kind of didn't think anything of it, and then I kind of looked at the nurse, and her face looked, like there's something wrong, and at that point she had said that that we can't find any heartbeat at 40 weeks, 2 days away from him being delivered, and at that point I was kind of in a state of shock. I couldn't really understand. Like, I knew what she was saying, but I couldn't process it. It was like I had this kind of weird out of body experience, and my wife was obviously horribly, just same thing. She was screaming and crying, and the doctor came in and confirmed it and was like, well, I mean, at this point we're going to have to send you home. We'll do a delivery tonight. So they sent us home, and that was the longest, car ride back home. We were returned to the hospital at about 5:00, and they took Sarah back to do the C-section, and I wanted to be in the room when they did it. So I, got all up in the, the sterile, for the surgery, and I was waiting to go in and, deliver my son that had died. And obviously Everett was my first child, and it was like I said, that's why I gave some of the backstory, was that it felt like such a long journey to even get to that point, with the infertility and the miscarriages, and kind of a scary midpoint at that 24 or 25 week. And then now be at this place where I'm sitting in this chair waiting to go into the operating room, which technically should have been, the happiest day of my life, turned into the worst day of my life. It was a nightmare. It was, again, still feeling like part of me was there and part of me was kind of in this distant fog of confusion. So I went in, and they took him out, and he must have passed away really earlier that morning, because he still had some color, color to him. I mean, if you didn't know he was dead or passed away, you wouldn't know. So that was really the only time that I got to hold him and feel him warm for a very short period of time, and got to cut his umbilical cord and help get him cleaned up and get him wrapped up, and they brought us back to the recovery room, and a unique maybe experience, but we were able to spend the next 4 days at the hospital with him. And, I tell this part of the story, it still seems like you kind of get mixed feedback on it, about different people's experiences when they've lost children as a baby, kind of in this stillborn time frame, and whether or not, some hospitals require that, the baby's taken within a certain period of time. But this particular hospital, we got to, be with him for several days, and that was basically the extent that I got to spend with my son, was in a hospital setting, just him there, and oddly enough, it did bring some level of comfort to have him there, holding my baby, even though I knew that we were going to leave and not go home with him. So, that 4 days there was, we tried to do as much, as we could. That was, I guess, taking pictures and things that, that we could at least have to remember him by, because that was kind of it. And as days went on, he, obviously started to look different. By the second or third day, it was kind of became a hard reality that this was it. This was the end of that journey. So we, the day before we left the hospital, I had to, figure out what we were going to do, how to, where to go in terms of funeral homes. A social worker came in with a list of funeral homes. I guess it's one of those things that you never think, it doesn't even, the thought never enters your brain that you'll have to at one point call and make funeral arrangements, or pick out, casket flowers, all that sort of stuff. I still just, I don't even know how I was able to do it. It was almost like I was on an autopilot, like I wasn't going to make my wife do it, and I wasn't going to, have somebody else do it. It was like, I need to do this. This is my son. And I want to, this is me parenting him in a way. It was like, I was going to choose these things for him. And fortunately I found a funeral home that came up to the room and let us walk out with them. Some funeral homes would only pick up from the morgue in the basement, which for me was like, it was kind of a mandate for me to be able to walk out with them. Like, I want to be able to walk out and load him into the hearse. I don't want to leave and have somebody pick him up. Like, I want to be the one to put him in the hearse and kind of walk out, so to speak, with him. And so that fifth day, the funeral home came, and they came up to the room, and we were already discharged to head out. And Sarah held him and I pushed her in the wheelchair, because she was still pretty, obviously had just been had a C-section. So it wasn't still in quite a bit of pain. And so wheeled us out to the front lobby of the hospital, and the hearse was waiting out front. And I loaded him up. They had a little bassinet in the back of the hearse, and I loaded him up and kissed him goodbye and watched him drive away. And that was the kind of where the real, at least for me, like the reality really hit me at that point. It's kind of like having him and being in the hospital. It's like I knew he was gone, but there was still some level of comfort because I had him. I could hold him, and but at that point, that's when it was like, okay, this is it. This is my life. This is, and for me, I felt so hopeless because I waited so long to get to that point, and then it was gone. And I didn't know if we would get back to that point. And, it was that next day where I was going through emails and just trying to get back to some level of normalcy, just work emails. And I had an email from a coworker that, not really a coworker, just somebody that I've, collaborated on different cases with. And he's an attorney, and it sent me an email and said, hey, I heard what happened to your son. And, back in 2015, I, lost a daughter to similar circumstances. And I just want you to know that, I'm here for you. I understand, the pain that you're going through. And at that moment, it was kind of like, I had this sense of like, okay, I think that's what I need to kind of move on, to move forward with this. Is I knew that was the ticket to at least being able to come through to the other side, whatever that is, or wherever it may be, was to reach out and to meet other dads. And so that's kind of the precursor to me starting to look and find and trying to find dads that have lost children of any age. I think early on it's, I did a lot of comparison. Like, I didn't feel necessarily like maybe worthy enough to share my grief because my son was a baby, and, I was looking to other dads who have lost, kids that are, in elementary school to teenagers to adults. And, I felt, for whatever reason, I felt like maybe a comparison, like that has to be way, way worse, that you had time with your child and they're gone. And so I struggle with that, like even feeling validated to be a part of this group, of a lost group. But I mean, in time, it's, I've got to learn that whether you have, 2 days or 20 minutes or 20 years, with your child, it's still your child. And, for me, I didn't get to make any memories, there's no memories, it's just, they're fleeting thoughts. They're all those memories that I envisioned of benchmarks in his life. And, but those are all still just, hypothetical thoughts. And that happened in 2017, February 13th of 2017. And I took a bunch of time off from work. And, we really, that first 60 days was, really, really, really hard. I mean, I didn't do much. I didn't go really anywhere. It was hard to get out of bed. It was hard to kind of see the light of day. Like, how am I supposed to just go back to work? And how are we supposed to just kind of pick up and and move on, move through life? Or, what does this even, I was so confused. And in a certain way, his loss, really shifted a lot of perspective in my life of just, I really didn't care about much anymore. It wasn't like wasn't like in a suicidal way. It was just like the things that I used to get worked up on didn't seem so trivial, like work and bills and all this shit that I just kind of was like, to some extent it was freeing. It was like, my only concern was just surviving this loss in a way that wasn't going to put me in a really tough place, because I didn't know, I didn't know what it was going to look like. I was scared. I was filled with a lot of fear, guilt, of could we have done something different? I mean, was the cause of death was simply he lost a blood supply issue. His cord had been cinched and wrapped, and he just must have been positioned just in a way that, whether it was through the night, that he just lost enough blood that he had passed on. So, and there's always those that time of the what ifs, or, was there a way to prevent this? So it was kind of this cycle of emotions, on and off throughout each day, kind of moving forward. His nursery was all set up. When we were at the hospital, some of our family went to the house and took out some of the major things like the high chair and things that were kind of in the common area of our house, which I really appreciated, because I was, that week before I had put the car seat in and his room was ready to roll. And I guess, there was so much intention behind him and planning for him, because it was like, again, it felt like such a long journey to even conceive a child. It was like we were on this long marathon, and then the finish line was taken away from us before we even got to the end. So yeah, I mean, I guess like I said before, is I tried to find ways to move forward through this, and engaging with other dads was the way that I explored through different ways, whether it was support groups in town. I tried to find as many groups as I could, created the Facebook group. We found a facility called Face Lodge out in Wisconsin, which is like a weekend retreat, a low cost and no cost retreat for families of parents who have lost children, or medically ill children, or even grandparents. And we met a lot of people through that program. So it was just, it was almost like trying to rebuild a life to some extent, because, the life that we were expecting was to be parents, and we were gonna, that was our next step. That was the next phase of our journey of our life. And that was taken away. And so we really had to like figure out what we were going to do, to press on, to move through this. So, we ended up having his funeral about a week later. And, it was like within time, as the months progressed, it was kind of like, the supports kind of faded, people stopped calling and checking in. And, I think it wasn't really until like I went back to work where I realized that like I'm really still not okay. Like I took a close to about a month and a half off, and then I went back and I had to take like another couple weeks off because I just wasn't able to concentrate. I just wasn't able to think. I think so much of that, the grief and the way I process is still true to this day. Like I still don't think I'm going to ever be that same person that I was, before I lost my son. It just, so much changed on that day, but there's also been a lot of growth too from his life. Even though it was very brief, there's been a lot of growth from that. And I think that's where, I feel privileged in a certain way to be a part of this group. And it sounds kind of sadistic in a way, but it's the way I need to frame it to make sense of it, that there's some reason why this happened. There's some reason why I was put in this position to have to face this burden and carry it with me, so I'm still looking for that. I'm still looking for what that is. I've found certain things, but I think I've made it my quest to, try to share Everett and do things around even stillbirth and research and just information and research and sharing information as a way to kind of contribute to his life, trying to make his memory a part of that. So I've joined other foundations to try to extend his life through that, trying to be of service in different ways. So, I mean, we're going on 5 years, and, there's times where it feels really raw, like like just sharing the story. Like I haven't really told the story in quite some time, and it really did like kind of hit me. From I didn't think it was going to impact me that way, so to speak. Early on when I would share a story, I could never even get through it, because it was like it just felt too much, and but I guess that's a good picture of grief, because it's not linear. And as time goes on, it doesn't always get better. It's all over the place, and it contributes to just other areas of my life too. Just work, marriage. I do have 2 twin 3-year-old boys now, and parenting them is definitely different because of Everett. It's there's so much more fear, and it created a kind of a whole other level of thinking and worrying that I didn't think I'd ever have to really put myself in. So, I guess, that in a brief form is the story of my son Everett. He was 3 days from being born. He was an IVF baby. He beautiful baby, like just one of those, like he was just a gorgeous, beautiful little boy, just perfect features. And I kind of always will wonder what he would have, what he'd be like today at 5, almost 5 years old. Now his brothers will be 4 in December, and So watching them grow, I'm always thinking, what would he have been like at this stage? What would he have? I do that almost, daily, kind of the what if, what if he was still here? And then if he was still here, would I have my boys, so was this meant to happen? Were they, that always trying to figure it out, trying to make sense of it is kind of a way to cope, I suppose. But I guess I'll never know until I cross over to that other life. And even at that, maybe I'll never know. But just the constant wondering of his life is always, I think that's what carries most true to me today is, when my sons meet certain benchmarks in their life, it's kind of like, I think about Everett and think about where he would be, or what kind of what his personality would be like compared to his brothers. And that's still really hard to do, because it's a void that's going to carry with me forever, so.
Well, Joseph, thank you for sharing that story of Everett with us. I know it's hard. I know Dan and I have both said our stories, and it never gets easier. And you've been at this longer than we have. So thank you for being brave and telling us that story. To be honest, you're the first dad we've interviewed with a stillborn child, and that has passed. And to be honest, I wasn't sure what kind of feelings when I first heard, how similar our feelings would be. And as I hear you talk, it's astonishing to me how almost mirror image the feelings are that Dan and I have talked about before, that we had, that you have, even to this day, years later. So to me, hearing your story, it was really interesting in that sense to know that grief really is, it doesn't matter when it comes to a child, losing your child. It seems like dads, no matter what, whether it's a stillborn to us with elementary kids, to dads we've talked to, kids in their 20s or, close to their 30s passing, we all feel pretty similar in that sense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, everything you've said, Chris and I have talked about together, and it's just we've been there in so many of those same areas that you just described, and it just is awful no matter what the age of the kid.
Right.
I missed one thing can you tell us what was the date again? February what? 2017?
It was February 13th.
Okay.
13th.
Because that hit me, because Jameson passed on February 27th. So that just, and it's like it's meaningless to most people, but it's so significant because, yeah, our lives were forever changed.
Right.
Super close to each other.
Yeah.
You hit on something that it's been one of my many big wonderings, and I think I have a hard time talking about it, asking it, because it sounds so morbid. And one of the things that really hit hard that I wonder is the memories that you talked about. I had 9 years of building memories with Jameson, and they were fantastic. And I had 9 years of building a relationship with Jameson. And you play the what if game. And I've always wondered, would it be better if Jameson had died before he was even born? Or is it better to not have memories and not build that relationship? Or is it better to have some memories?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think, like as I shared, I struggled with that, I was like feeling, was worthy enough to share and be a part of this group, because until I started having more conversations, and the things that I heard from other people were resonating with me. And Chris, you did basically exactly what I did, hearing other people's stories and vice versa through many conversations, is that a lot of the same feelings, emotions, just experience that you have at the day of and the weeks and months after are all the same, or very similar. And I still think about the memories. Is it better that I didn't have that, or some days I wish I would have been able to see them, first day of kindergarten, or all those benchmark things, that you think of, that when you have kids, that you do, that are important, part of their lives. But some days I think it'd be easier, and some days I think it might be harder to have to look back and see those memories. But I think either way, it's just there's no right or wrong, I guess. There's no good solution to that. I think it's the fact that we've lost a child, whether they're, like I said, 20 minutes old or 20 years. It's stopped, and the cycle of life is interrupted. It's not supposed to be this way. We're supposed to have children and watch them grow, and they're supposed to put us in the ground. Not to be that blunt about it, but yeah, I mean, I just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the. I wish there was a simpler way to reframe the way our minds work and go, because I think what we do is we try to do that to soothe ourselves in some way, to try to make it feel better, even if we're not necessarily having a bad day, or we're in a bad place. But I just think we're always going to be conditioned now to go there, to the what ifs, or to look back on that day, or to look back on the memories, or to wish we had more memories. 9 years old, well, I mean, it's only 9 years, the whole lifetime of memories, that are gone. So I think either way you look at it, we were cheated. We were cheated out of time, with our kids. And I think I'll never fully accept that. I've accepted certain things about this, but when I hear other people's stories, I in some way I internalize that too, because it's like I feel for you guys, because I know what that pain is. And it's just to say life's unfair, that saying, it's like, well, this is one of those things that I feel like is like really just evil, horrible, unfair to have to to bury a child is just gut wrenching. It's just gut wrenching.
Yeah, and I think as we talk about this, and you could probably see it in your Facebook group too, the connections that grieving dads have. We all have that bond, that it's an unspoken bond. We don't even have to say anything.
Yeah.
We know we lost a child. I just met another dad yesterday, actually, who had lost a child from suicide, and we didn't even have to really say anything. We kind of had that instant, that connection. It's unfortunate, but it's just kind of crazy how it all works out like that. Another thing I really want to say that, I never even thought about until you brought up, Joseph, was that question of, am I even allowed to feel like this, like have these feelings, because these other dads have lost their children, and their children were, elementary or older. They have these memories, and your child was still. I never even thought that parents that had lost stillborn children like that they felt like that. So it gives me another perspective to think on, another emotion that Dan and I never felt that emotion. So that's definitely a different emotion that you guys have, and that you have to deal with on a whole nother level. How did you get past that? How did you, for any other dads that are maybe listening that lost their child from stillborn birth, what helped you in that, and getting past that question?
Yeah. I think trying to create something, in his name that was lasting here, something tangible was important to me. So early on, people, when he first passed away, people obviously wanted to do something for us. They wanted, what can we do for you? And it's like, you barely can think enough to figure out to brush your teeth and remember to do some of the basic care stuff, let alone, what you need. What you need is your child back. That's what you need.
Yeah.
But I just told people, you can donate money and we're just going to start a GoFundMe for something. I don't want flowers. I don't want meals. I don't want, if you want to do something, we're going to end up doing something and for Everett, kind of in his honor, but I don't know what. That was my thing, was I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what. I didn't have enough brain capacity to put something together. So we did some kind of fundraising, and we ended up creating a huge donation to Face Lodge, which is like I said, spoke on Face Lodge, and they're one of the agencies that I've worked with throughout my journey, and they provide low cost and no cost weekend retreat for bereaved parents or parents with medically ill children, and they operate fully off donations. So they're fully all the staff they have and everything is run and operated fully off donation and grants. So it's we felt that giving to them was a way to kind of give something back in Everett's name. And so in turn, we were able to name a piece of the property out there in Danbury, Wisconsin after him. So there's a little lake on the property that we were able to name Everett's Lake. So that's out there. And so that is in tune to some other things you can do out there, from trees to benches to plaques. There's a whole different, there's all sorts of different ways you can do that. So, and then that got me thinking, well, maybe we could do more of that. So we started Everett's Foundation is took off, and then we've with the birth of my sons, it kind of took a little bit of a backseat, but more with the same notion of giving back to other agencies that are more donation grant funded, that either work surrounding child loss and grief, bereavement. Star Legacy, which is one that really focuses on stillbirth research and advocacy. So his foundation, we give back to some of those other more established nonprofits that do some really, really, really good nitty-gritty work, and we do that in a way to help kind of keep Everett's his name out here, and we get involved as much as we can with whether that's walks or runs or any opportunity that we can have to go be around other parents, whether it's stillborn or young children or teenage children. It's just, we look and we seek that stuff out, and we just have built a community. We've built kind of a new family of people that have lost children of all ages, and that's how we've survived this, is to continue doing that. I mean, it's going on 5 years, and I still make an effort almost on a daily basis to do some sort of outreach. I started the Grieving Dads Project Facebook group on Facebook as a means to connect and help other men connect to other men who have lost children, because we need very specific. Sometimes, like for me, I needed somebody who lost a child of that age, whether it was a baby or an infant, because I couldn't connect to somebody who had lost a teenager. Like, I understood the depth and the gravity of that loss and how painful that is, but I needed someone who experienced that specifically, and so creating that platform has helped other men find other guys who have lost children of similar ages. And I think that's important. It really is. It's not so much comparing that my grief's worse or less than yours, but it's really just trying to find a way to feel like you're not alone in this, that that there's other people that have had to face this and have had to walk this journey in this road. So I think if there's anything to say to how to survive it, which worked for me, was to just connect and just to try to take any opportunity that I can to talk about Everett and share his story, and be of service when I can, and do so kind of, I guess that's how I parent a child that I never got to parent, is that I do things that allows me to help others, or give back in a way. So that's what's worked for me. I know everybody has their own way to cope, and it hasn't always been that smooth. The first year was just trying to find my way, like throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what would stick and what wouldn't stick, and then carrying on from there. So yeah, that's kind of how I would kind of answer that.
You just blew my mind with something that I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. How do I parent a child I didn't never got to parent? Uh, that I don't even know what to say. That's going to make me think for a long time. Um, wow. Um, I think for me, listening to you talk, you're hitting so many points that yeah, grief is so complicated. There's so many layers, and being connected to anybody that's grieving a loss of any kind has nuggets of helpfulness. But then you need to be connected with people who have lost a child. Then you need to be connected with people who have lost a child in a similar age, a similar circumstance, a similar location. I like everything, and
Right.
that's been it's saved me because Chris has actually literally saved me because Mason and Jameson were 2 years apart in age, and it's so different for us than it is for you, having lost a child that was never even born. And to walk through the valleys that we walk through constantly on a daily basis, you need just so many different layers of connection to deal with every single thought and thing that life throws at you. I agree with
Right.
that fully.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like I said, it was almost like just had to recondition myself how to work, be an employee, because then it was like I was returning to work and everybody knew that I had lost a son, so people were obviously treating me differently, and like the way I cared still about work, I just cared differently, it's just so that perspective has changed a lot of things, just work, family, just a lot of domains of my life. My perspective has shifted, and I think that is, one of the nuggets, or one of the blessings that I've taken from being in this position of a bereaved dad, is that a lot of things that used to really eat at me don't really seem to eat at me anymore, because I think I've stood at the ledge of despair, and have really felt something that most people could never imagine what it is to feel that way, so yeah, and thanks, Dan, for recapping that. How do you parent a child that you never got to parent? And I think that somebody actually who I've been fairly close to had lost a son to cancer at about 10 years. He just had turned 10, and he had talked about that. How I want to be able to still parent my son. I want to be able to still parent him. Even though he's gone, I want to find ways to parent him. So, when he does projects, he's mindful about, kind of taking a moment to think, like, I'm going to share this opportunity to change this tire, kind of mindful, like sending that up to wherever our children are, as a way to say, this is how I'm parenting. I'm showing my son to, how I'm going to change this tire, or, just being very hyper aware that everything he's doing, he's still modeling. His son's still with him and watching, and he's still trying to be a good dad to his son. That still as weird as that might sound to some, to dads who have lost children, it seems pretty like, yeah, that does make sense, and I can maybe practice that in certain ways, So I took that and really tried to practice it, like I said, and just getting involved as many things that I can that gives me opportunities to talk about Everett or to see his name in writing. I think that's one thing for me when you have a child that you lose as a baby. Their names they're not in yearbooks or report cards or things of that nature. You just don't see their name written out other on a stillborn certificate and paperwork from the hospital. You didn't really see it. So when I can see it maybe written out at a virtual race or walk or fundraiser, I mean, it's those little things, man, that just can carry so much for a grieving dad or mom or a family, to see that. It's as minute as that might be, it can mean a world to parents of a child that's no longer here. So.
Yeah, Chris and I actually just talked about that in our last episode of Little Things. And you said early on in sharing your story how people disappeared pretty quickly. And I've experienced that very harshly lately because we're 2 years in, and Chris is, I guess, still on that journey. But yeah, just the littlest things that for us, our elementary school did a huge fundraiser last year, and they sold T-shirts. And every single time I see one of those kids still walk in with their T-shirt on, I have to go over to them and just say, "Hey, nice shirt. Thank you for wearing it." And it does. The littlest things mean the world to us, to know that we're still supported, and our sons, and for those that have lost daughter, to know that they're not forgotten is enormous. And I have to imagine that it's never going to change. I mean, even 20, 30 years down the road, we want to hear our kids' names, and we want to hear memories or stories or hopes or whatever it is.
Right. Yep. Exactly. I think that's such a key point of not wanting your child to be forgotten. And I think I definitely still worry about that. As a having a child who didn't get to live essentially. I worry about that of him being forgotten. And feel like, and I think maybe I tend to overanalyze, people, family, friends, who I maybe feel like have forgotten. But I have to remind myself that everybody, copes and processes things. And what I have found is, people don't want to share that they're thinking about your child because they're worried that it's going to make you upset, So I think the more I say things like, I want you to talk about if you're thinking about my child or if something reminded you of Everett or what, I want you to share those things because that's important, it's important to have those times to hear. I think friends and family that I thought were going to support me and be there, some of them I was surprised that weren't, and there's people that really, that I guess would have never thought would have been that type of support stepped into that role. And I think that in itself, again, is kind of one of those blessings and perspectives that I've taken away from that, is that there's some people in my life that are here because of him that have really become of support. And there's people that aren't in my life anymore because they chose to back away because whatever, this scared them or whatever, or, there was an expectation on my half, so I think there's still work, in relationships because grief certainly just trickles over into everything, marriage and friendships, work, coworkers. So I still, after almost 5 years, I still have relationships that are damaged because of the way I maybe interpreted how they reacted or whatnot. So again, it's complicated. It's really, really complicated. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely complicated. I think you're right. Dan and I have talked about this in the past, how uh, people sometimes run for the hills because they're afraid, like, it's gonna, you lost your kid, I don't want to lose mine, this could happen to me, and they try to hide from it, like we're trying to have something happen to their kid or something. I don't know, but I know Dan and I have had the exact same experience that you has. Some people stepped up that you didn't expect. Some people ran when you really thought they would be there. And it adds to all the emotions you're already dealing with too, as well. Those, especially those ones you thought would be there for you when they're not. It makes it hurt even more a lot. So for me, that's how it was for sure. So I had another question, and this is a personal question, so by all means you don't have to answer. But I know Dan and I have talked about kind of how, when you lost your son, and I know when we lost our sons, at least Dan and I have talked. It's almost like starting a new life. Everything's completely different, because you had all these hopes and expectations and dreams. And I'm curious how Dan and I have talked a little bit about our marriages and how they've had their ups and downs since the loss. And, we're trying to talk to other dads out there that are dealing with loss. How did your marriage, you guys have other kids now, you're still together, it sounds like, but how were those first couple months to year, and as you moved on, how did that go?
I think, initially we, the loss, I think early on, it really brought us together. I mean, I think it really bonded us together because through the journey to even conceive Everett, there was so much intention behind that process as in itself. So there was a lot of, obviously, talk and conversation and dialogue and processing that those particular medical items. I mean, there was so much to that process that I felt like even before we were really bonded in that. And then, after the fact, I think we felt still that bond, like we were in this together, and we were basically kind of holding each other up. But then there was a point where it's like we needed different things. Like we needed different things to like fill our cup of healing, like spending time together, and that wasn't enough anymore, or it wasn't enough on top of other things. Like I had to, it was good for her to go to groups that, where women could talk about, miscarriages and pregnancy loss or infant loss. And for me, I was at that stage of comparing my grief, and I needed other things. So I think it's very, very similar to grief, where it's like we're kind of like this, it's like the kind of together and out, where we'll have moments and time frames where we're feeling on and communicating, and there's times that we don't. And I think when we've added our other children to our life, I think that's where it's gotten harder to spend time and communicate, and then it's hard enough just to make time for yourself. Then how do you make time to connect with your wife? How do you make time to connect, with your kids? One bucket empties, the other fills. You're constantly trying to find some level of balance. And we're still together, and we have some really highs and we have some really lows, and we might be in different places with our kind of grief with Everett. And so I think once we had our kids, I think that's when it's gotten more complicated. Time is more precious. Communication is probably more important than it's ever been. Just instead of perceiving, thoughts or emotions based on certain things, it's like, man, we really just have to, like, where are you at? You need to tell me what you need, and just kind of have much more authentic, kind of blunt dialogue, because the time we have to talk is limited. It's kind of these little windows of time where kind of like ships passing in the night. So if we don't use that time to execute some level of communication, whether it's to talk about the boys or something going on with us, or maybe it's just to say I'm having a hard time. Like those first couple of years, it was a lot of just sitting down and just talking about where we're at with Everett, and the loss. And so I think it's important, if you have a partner, is to just not expect that they're going to grieve like you grieve, or vice versa. And I've spoken to a lot of dads who tend to maybe have some struggles in their marriage because maybe they're thinking that being strong and not showing their emotion is what their partner wants, when in reality that's all they wanted, was just maybe to sit down and cry together. So I guess it's just asking what you need, or what it is you need and what they need from you. And just, I guess that's what's worked for me, is just, what do you need from me? What do you need me to do to help you? So yeah, it's definitely not easy. Like I said, there's been extreme highs and lows, and it takes work. Again, I think if anything is meant to be, or it takes a level of work. I wish we could rest on our laurels of, that things would just work themselves out, or even with grief. I wish we didn't have to do so much to make this feel better, but it is what it is. It's something that you have to take action on, so I mean, I'm happy that we're still married and together, but it's definitely taking a lot of work to stay where we used to be. I guess that's that whole new life thing. It's just we've had to build a new marriage, so to speak, and a way to communicate. And then you enter kids, and it just becomes a whole different thing. So again, it's just that constant adjusting. So.
No, yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of, especially I feel a lot of the same things in my marriage, in terms of sometimes we're really close, sometimes we're far away. And while we're still pretty new in this journey, only a year and a half in, I could honestly say, like you said, us having a conversation and pretty much saying, hey, you got to be completely blunt with me, no matter how much it's going to hurt, and just straight up tell me, has actually helped us a lot. Because I think I wasn't as blunt before, and then after Mason passed, I was even less, saying anything. And then it was really just causing more friction and more difficulty. So after we had that first conversation of, hey, we really just need to be blunt with each other no matter what, be respectful, but say what we're feeling, and how much it's really helped. So for any dads that are listening that are maybe going through this themselves, maybe that's the conversation you need to have with your significant other. Like, hey, we're both going through grief. We might be at different levels. We might be at the same level. Let's talk about it. Let's have that very blunt conversation about what's working, what's not working. How can we make this work? Do we want to make this work? Hopefully they do. I don't ever advocate for divorce, but if it happens, try your best at least to be as honest with each other during such a difficult time. Dan, what have you guys gone through with you and Erica?
Yeah, you guys nailed it. Erica and I had a discussion within the first couple days, or it wasn't even a discussion. Within the first day or two, we looked at each other and said, divorce is not an option. And it's like, okay. And that set the tone. And I don't remember if we discussed it or if we just did it, but we just really worked well together in what Joseph was just talking about, that there were times that we needed to be holding each other tight. There were times that we needed to be talking, and there were times that we needed to just go our separate ways and do whatever it is. And there were times that I needed to go out with my friends, she needed to go, and we just did it. And we did all those pieces, and it's worked really well for us. So yeah, it's a conversation that, because yeah, I mean, Joseph, you've seen it, I'm sure, running your page, that there's so many men on there who talk about their marriages are over, and yep. we have to fight. We've already lost a kid. We don't need to lose our family too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And hey, it really is a fight. It is a battle to keep try to keep the marriage fluid and moving in a positive and progressive manner. And so yeah, it takes a lot of active work. I agree. I think that's a great statement.
Yeah. So Joseph, is there anything else with your story that you want to share and get out to people?
I guess for me, it's, what I just would say, no matter what, no matter what, the age of your child is, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to reach out. It's okay to cry. We don't have to be tough. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that, I think there's that stereotype that, men, we need to be the support. We need to be the rock. We need to be there for our wife or our spouse or our partner. And that we're not allowed to process, and we're not allowed to feel or collaborate. It's like, that shouldn't be true. And unfortunately, I think that message is still out there, to some extent. I guess that's, do what you need to do to reach out and connect. There's no shame in this. This really is for a lot of men. It's kind of a life or death situation for themselves. Maybe not death in meaning death itself, but just kind of death to your old life. You really have to fight to kind of get back what you had in terms of just everything. Reach out on Facebook, other groups, find a therapist, find a couples. I mean, there's so many resources out there. I just don't be afraid to at least try them and see where they take. Because, again, I'm in groups and do things that I never even, it wasn't even a thought in my brain that I thought I'd have to, that I'd be in or talking about. But I think if we can just do better as men to support each other, I think that's why when I hear someone's doing a podcast or anything, it's like, man, I just think it's so wonderful that you guys are doing this podcast and reaching out to other men and allowing them a platform to share their stories. And for some, it's like you said, it's a lot of times their first time really sharing the story. And I think the more I've told my story and just kind of where I'm at, it's healing for me too. Just like you guys said, like you guys get something out of this just as I do. And I think that's the message of the fellowship. I think it's no different than, if you're in AA or, you need the collaboration and fellowship of other people to know you're not alone, you have support. And when you hear other people basically sharing your story and you get the hairs in the back of your neck kind of stand up, because it's like, holy shit, like that's like they basically said word for word what I felt, what I thought, that's when it's like, okay, I'm not alone. I think I'm going to be okay. So, I think, again, just do what you need to do to see through it. I don't think there's moving forward or moving on. It's just getting to this new side of your life. It really is. It's just kind of trudging a new path, and it's not easy. There's no playbook. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just finding what works for you and sticking to it and just trying to do it on a daily basis if you have to. So.
Well, Joseph, I really want to take this opportunity to thank you for coming on and sharing your story. It means a lot to Dan and I to have you on and share your Facebook group, Grieving Dads Project. If anyone is looking for some support, you can come on there. Joseph's on there as the admin, and Dan and I are both on there. We'll try to help out any way we can. And I really appreciate you taking the time today to just share your story about Everett. It means a lot to us. And we hope we can help continue his memory as well.
Thank you. You guys appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you for reaching out to me and giving me this opportunity, and sharing your stories with me. And again, creating this arena for allowing men this time to talk about their children. So it's really, really, really great. Thank you guys. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, Joseph, I echo what Chris said. Thanks, man. Before we do sign off, Everett's Foundation, what's the official name and website? How do people find you so they can check you out and see if they want to support you?
Yeah, so it's Everett, Everett, and then his middle initial J. Gatlin, GATLIN.com.
Perfect. So yeah, we want to encourage everybody to go look at Joseph and his wife Sarah's website and read through it and consider how you may join them and partner with them and trying to make some positive things come from the most horrific things that life is throwing at us. So, as always, if any of our listeners have any questions, comments for Joseph, Chris, or me, we are here.
Yep.
I imagine that your website has your contact info. Again,
Yep.
Grieving Dads Project on Facebook, info at jamesonsjoy.org, Miles for Mason. We're all over the place. And yeah, as Joseph has painted such a perfect picture of tonight, we can't do this alone. And so
Right.
reach out, guys, and let us help carry you. We'll carry each other through life.
Yeah.
So Joseph, thanks, man. It's an
Okay.
honor to meet you. I have tremendous respect for you.
Same. Likewise for both of you guys. Utmost respect and thanks for taking the time to do this. Really, really appreciate it. You really, really have no idea. So look forward to, collaborating again down the road. And thanks again, guys. I appreciate it.
And with that, guys, we want to thank everybody for listening to A Father's Love, Healing Through Heartache.